Well, we finally got a primetime game where both starting NFL quarterbacks are healthy. We got Derek Carr and the Saints taking on Matt Stafford and the Rams. And honestly, man, I'm kind of excited for this one. We're starting to get a little bit of health on both sides of the ball here for this game. Both these teams were a little banged up earlier in the season, so I'm glad to see both these guys are going to be a little bit more healthy coming into this one.
Yeah, with everybody healthy, it means there's a lot of guys priced up. There's not a ton of value to look at here. Kyron Williams is the most expensive player on the slate. I'm going to want to get to a ton of him at captain, but that's going to make building really, really difficult. So let's get into this one. What is up, guys? Welcome to the Edge DFS. My name is Tyson Smith, joined by Ellie Hernandez. Ellie, Saints going into LA versus the Rams. Finally got a good Thursday game here. The last few weeks we've spin the wheel on Thursday just because these games have just been dog shit with backup quarterbacks. This one, at least we have two guys that are actually starting quarterbacks. Derek Carr had his, probably one of his better games of the season last week, going up against the Giants. Threw for what, 3 touchdown passes in that game. But generally speaking, Derek Carr this year and just Derek Carr with the Saints, I feel like has been kind of a bust. I don't love him in this spot. I know that the Rams defense will give up some yards. They will. I just don't know how much I love Derek Carr in this one. His team doesn't even love him. Like, his offensive line hates him. Like, I don't know what the situation is here, but this feels like a situation where I might get to under the field on Derek Carr. That's just me. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, man, I don't disagree with you. There's just it's tough slate to pay up for. We alluded to it on the intro. Everyone's healthy. That means you're gonna have to pay. You're gonna have to pay up for literally any one of the studs, even the bottom tier guys that we're usually comfortable playing are priced up. So it is a tough one. Like, it's going to go beyond just whether or not you're willing to fade Carr. You're going to have to fade one of the wide receivers. You're only going to be able to choose maybe two of Olave, Nakua, and Cup. Right? Then you start factoring Kamara. Like, this is a tough one, man. Like, there's really going to be guys you're naturally fading just because you don't have a choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, guys, throw us a like on your way in. Let's get us to 50 likes for this video. We have that free Discord, obviously. You could scan that if you're watching on your TV or computer. If not, go down into the description and click that button, free Discord. Let's get into this. So, Saints going into LA. Rams are at home, 4-point favorites. This is a 45.5-point total. The Rams are trending up, man. They've looked great. Basically, when they have Kyron Williams, when they have Kyron Williams, this team can win against anybody. They took the Ravens into overtime. They probably could have won that game. This team, to me, is playoff bound, and I feel like they're trending up enough. And it feels like, to me, yeah, the Saints have won a few games in a row, I believe. Let's look at their schedule. They've won 2 games in a row. Guess who those 2 games have been against? The Giants and the Panthers. Look at their schedule overall, dude. Their wins: Titans, Panthers, Patriots, Colts, Bears, Panthers, Giants. This team does not impress me. I don't trust this team at all. Like, to me, this feels like this could be a Rams blowout. Like, it absolutely could be. Their defense, the Saints defense, is grading out well against all positions, minus the tight end spot, and they're ranked high. You've got their 2 cornerbacks in the top 4 when it comes to PFF grade. I feel like it's skewed a little bit. At the end of the day, they're still, this team is still playing against NFL quality players, obviously. The grades aren't lying completely. But am I saying I'm not going to play Matt Stafford and stack the shit out of this Rams offense just because the Saints defense is grading out well? No, I'm not going to do that. Thoughts on this Saints team? Like, they feel like at 7-7, feel like kind of frauds to me, and I just don't love them. I just don't love this team, man. Thoughts on this Saints defense, man? This schedule is way easy for them.
Yeah, man. Like all in all, I think this is honestly, I think Saints are underperforming from what we expected earlier on the season. Derek Carr is one of the better deep ball throwers. I figured they'd be able to have some kind of offense or some kind of consistency on a week-to-week basis, just based on that. But yeah, your point about the defense is really interesting, and I think we need to take into account for right. They play in the NFC South. They play Tampa twice, Carolina twice, and Atlanta twice. Like that accounts for something. Tampa, we know, has been a little bit different. Baker Mayfield has been balling out, and we've been enjoying that a little bit. But Carolina sucks. They are literally the worst team in the NFL.
Yeah.
So these kinds of things matter. They haven't really played anybody worthwhile, and I don't know, dude. Like we were talking about it in the Discord a little bit, but I think Sean McVay might be one of like the more underrated coaches of our generation. And that's kind of saying something because he is praised very highly for what he does, but like he is an absolute offensive mastermind. Like what we see with Mike McDaniel and this Miami offense, right? Like Sean McVay is up there with like these guys are geniuses. Like you can ask him about a play from November 5th, 1966. He'll be like, oh yeah, fucking Walter Payton. Obviously that doesn't play out that way, but he knows that shit. So like he's going to come in with a game plan that is ready to take advantage of some of the weaknesses on the Saints. And again, you've got Kupp and Puka Nacua both healthy. I don't know, man. Like I really see that I think this game hits the over, and I think this is going to be one of the more fun Thursday night games we've seen in a while.
I hope so, man. We don't have to worry about any weather in LA, even though technically that's not a dome. There's some openings. Remember that a game a few years ago where it was delayed because of lightning. So we don't really have to worry about weather here, thankfully. Look, this Rams offense, they have Kupp back. They got Nacua. They got Kyren Williams. Demarcus Robinson steps up with Tutu Atwell out. Tutu Atwell could be back for this game. We'll talk about that in a minute. But this team runs 90% 11 personnel. They're going to have 3 wide receivers on the field all the time. And you're going to see Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua on the field all the time. And, dude, this team runs motion 60% of the time. They're trying to get these guys open, moving around, confusing the defense, try to confuse them with complicated-looking formations and plays, but they're pretty simple overall. This team is going to run the ball effectively. I don't care what the fantasy points for running backs against the Saints shows at this point in the year. I'm not convinced that they're going to be able to shut this team down. That's just my thought on it. Offensive line wise, Saints are ranked according to PFF like 17th. So they don't have a great offensive line, but they're finding ways to make it work. On the other side, though, the Saints, we came in talking about this, earlier in the season about their offensive line and giving up sacks. They've corrected a little bit, but they're still ranked 21st according to PFF. What do you think the biggest weakness is for either of these teams that we can kind of look at? It seems to me like the tight ends, we can target some of these tight ends. If you're looking at, this is some charts that we get from Fantasy Fellowship on TikTok. If you're looking at the numbers, the Rams are 28th against tight ends, and the Saints are 23rd against tight ends. But if you look at everything else here, you see these arrows. Quarterback points allowed, the Rams are not looking too hot, but generally speaking, the Saints and the Rams are kind of middle of the field in some of these categories. What can we really kind of look at here as something we could target? Because the numbers aren't pointing towards Kyren Williams having a good game, but it's still Kyren Williams is still this Rams offense.
Yeah, I mean, well, like the first thing is with Kyren Williams, we just know that he's going to get all the workload, and there's just so much for defenses to worry about. I don't know, man. He's going to get 3. He's going to get multiple attempts on the goal line, so he's always going to be in play regardless of kind of where the numbers are at. I think the Rams are just interesting in general because this is a particular slate where like I don't know that I necessarily want to pay for Derek Carr. They're skill players that I want to, and that's really kind of where this looks like we should be attacking them. But that said, like I think we just have a unique opportunity, right? Like Derek Carr is a great deep ball thrower, and Chris Olave, if he's healthy coming into this, like I think who is it? Ian Hartsitz or one of those dudes was just getting fucking trolled on Twitter because he came up with that stat or called out Chris Olave is leading the league in unrealized air yards, and everyone's like, "What the fuck is that?
What does that even mean?"
Well, if you're playing fantasy football, shit like that does actually matter, right? He starts making some of these catches or is able to haul in some of these. All of a sudden, he's a top 5 wide receiver like he was last year. So I think the Rams defense is kind of. I think situationally they've been allowed to kind of rely on just kind of a more balanced attack, and that might be why some of their numbers are softened here, right? But like I think you got to start considering wide receivers, and and then Alvin Kamara, right? Like it's just a hard thing. We can look at the numbers all we want, but the two places that the Saints are going to have to stay active and involved to win this game are going to be Kamara and Chris Olave, and I don't know that you can convince me anything otherwise.
Yeah. Absolutely. You sprinkle in some of the tight ends that we have for the Saints. That makes it interesting. Juwan Johnson had a touchdown last week, but I believe it was only on like 3 targets. You got Taysom Hill on a showdown slate. We're going to have to play Taysom Hill on a showdown slate. You could think about fading him, but the second you don't play him, he's going to have 2 touchdowns, 1 passing, 1 receiving, or something weird like that. So we could target these tight ends a bit in this game. We'll get to that. Anything else jump out to you? Let's see what else I have here on this chart here. Target distribution. The Rams are going to throw their wide receivers. And more than likely, it's going to be Kupp and or Nakua. That third wide receiver position, they're going to be on the field a lot, whoever that may be. Whether it's Tutu or whether that's Demarcus Robinson. You saw last week, Demarcus Robinson, 95% of the snaps. I think with Tutu back, I think maybe that's more of a split. But if Tutu's really, if they're working him back in, I think Demarcus Robinson, they stick with a hot hand, and he probably gets more of the reps up until the point that Tutu is ready to go fully. Nakua ranked number 1 run grade when it comes to wide receivers. This guy's going to be on the field every play, and they're going to use him as a run blocker, and that's what this team does, man. These wide receivers get involved in all aspects. Matt Stafford. The only quarterback in the NFL who hasn't fumbled in 2023. He's got 9 picks, but no fumbles. Been pretty damn good this year, man. Not a whole lot of expectations coming into this season, especially with Kupp going down early on. They've been able to play well, and I think they're going to make the playoffs this year. Let's see. One last thing to talk about here is the blitz. So these teams, they don't blitz too much. I think they blitz around 22% of the time. In comparison, the Vikings blitz over 50%. So they will blitz, but I think it's all about the front 4 or front 3 pressure. And we see Derek Carr, his passer rating plummets from 103 in a clean pocket to 63. So, and similar to Stafford, if these teams can up front put pressure on the quarterback, that's going to make things a lot more interesting. And we might see a little lower scoring game here than we thought if they can make that happen. But generally speaking, these teams are not going to get a lot of sacks. They're tied for 27th in sacks this year with 30 each. So 1 or 2 sacks per team probably is what you can expect in this game. All right, let's get to injuries here. Let me cue that up.
Yeah, just pain. It was pain everywhere.
So Olave is expected to return from his ankle injury, which is big news. That would have changed the entire slate if Olave is out. That opens up a ton of value. It makes things more interesting. That's not happening. He looks like he's going to play. Ryan Ramczyk, their tackle, was a DNP. If he's out, I think he missed last week as well. If he's out, that's worth noting. Tutu Atwell, that concussion, he had a full practice. I think he's going to be back. What are we doing about this third wide receiver spot here? Because there is some value to be had there. I think these guys are relatively priced. If Tutu comes back, I think he's $2,800. I got to be interested in getting to a little Tutu because we just don't have any value to talk about here.
Yeah, so I mean, look, whoever is going to be in that third wide receiver spot, I think Tutu is averaging like 4.5 targets per game or something along those lines. So we know that there's going to be a little bit of volume headed that direction. And right now, we're not really comfortable with a lot of there's just no news, and everyone's marginally healthy. So I think you got to be willing to consider a guy like Atwell. Now, I don't want to harp on it too much because we're going to talk about it a lot over this show, but Chris Olave is also a very interesting one, right? We may not have news coming into this slate, but we really need to determine what we think is going on for him. Like, I don't want to overreact too much, but Twitter doctors over here are saying that, like, this is still a pretty serious injury. And they're comparing it to what Michael Thomas had. It's a similar injury to what MT had, and he's kind of struggled with from coming back too early and having his issues. So I think you can kind of determine what you want to do there. Maybe that softens his ownership and it becomes an elite leverage play. But if you think that he's really hurt, then I think you can really kind of maybe you give Kamara a boost. Or to your point, we're talking about the tight ends. Maybe it's Kamara and Juwan Johnson or something along those lines that you want to consider. So I know we don't have news yet, but Chris Olave is obviously the most important. And I mean, we might have to just see how he looks in pregame drills, right? Because they're not going to practice this week. He's going to be a part of walkthroughs. And he's going to be DNP the entire practice or the entire week. So, we're not going to get any real news on him. We're going to have to pay attention to whatever we can find.
Yeah, with all the weird injury stuff, I mean, especially in that Seahawks game where, my God, that what a shit show. I can't even tell you how many times I went back between Lock, Geno. It was crazy. So I think that just reminds us, even if Chris Olave is expected to play, I'm not really getting too deep into building lineups until I see inactives. I think that's usually how I've always rolled, but that reminded me a little bit more to let's just wait for inactives. An hour and a half is still a decent amount of time to be able to build your lineups. All right, let's get into our breakdown. Let's do it. Break it down. Matt Stafford is 10K. Derek Carr 9K. So look, I feel like this is not a 2-quarterback slate. I obviously could be wrong about that. But to me, if I had to pick one guy that's expensive, that you said you cannot play this guy, gun to my head, it'd probably be Derek Carr. And that can be a little bit risky, obviously, on a showdown slate, fading a quarterback. But 9K, you got Matt Stafford at 10K. I want Matt Stafford in almost all of my lineups. I think that, in my opinion, this game goes down as Rams winning majority of the game, and maybe New Orleans puts up a fight, in the second half to make things interesting. But I think this is an easy Rams win, in my opinion. How are they going to get there? Well, Kyren Williams and Matt Stafford. So to me, Matt Stafford at 10K, we're not going to be able to afford double quarterback builds with Kyren Williams at captain, because that means we got to fade Kamara. That means we got to fade Puka or Kupp. And I'm not comfortable doing that. Thoughts on these quarterbacks, man? I think you got to prioritize Stafford, and maybe Derek Carr gets some more GPP run for me. But for single entry, I'm not playing double quarterback. I'm going Matt Stafford. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think you're right on for single entry. I think maybe a unique way to build for GPP might be to kind of force some double quarterback stacks. Now, that's more just to be unique and capitalize on some potential leverage there than anything else. I mean, how often are you going to see a quarterback projected for less than 35% ownership, even at 9K? So yeah, it's something to keep an eye on. But it's just so hard on this slate. I have Matt Stafford, I have Nakua and Kupp. I want to play one of those guys. I literally been saying this the whole goddamn time. I got Kamara or Olave. I want to play one of those guys. You're only going to be able to afford 3 of that entire grouping. So I mean, Carr just seems to fall out, and you can capture so much of the Saints offense with some of the superstars, right? Kamara could have 10 catches for 18 yards and 95 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you can get all of Derek Carr's points through Olave or really through Kamara and whoever you think is going to be the number 1 wide receiver or guy with target. So we don't need to spend too much time here. You'll see when we build, it's impossible to have both these guys in too much. Matt Stafford's obviously the better play here.
To me, this is 4-2, or even 2-4, or even 5-1s, Rams. And out of those 2 guys for the Saints, pick one stud, whether it's Kamara or Olave. If you could afford both, then great. Kamara or Olave, and then a punt. Sort of just pick anybody else. That's kind of how I feel this slate is going to go down. Let's go to running backs. Let's start with New Orleans here. AK-41, 10.8K. Jamal Williams, 4,200. Jamal Williams led the league in rushing touchdowns last year, 0 this year. I don't think I'm super interested in Jamal Williams, but of course, one of the only showdown slates for the Saints this year that we've covered. He'll probably score, and I'll have 0 of him, Jamal Williams. But look, Kamara is an elite play all the time. If he doesn't get you there on the ground, he'll get you there in the air. Will he score a touchdown? Hard to know, but he's a guy that you got to prioritize him and Olave on this team. 10.8K though with Kamara, that's expensive. Kyren Williams is what, 11.2K? It's going to be tough, dude. So thoughts on Kamara here. I don't think you have to overthink this. Sprinkle in a Jamal Williams lineup here and there, but focus on Alvin Kamara. He's 40% owned on a showdown slate, simply just because you can't get to everybody. To me, that's huge leverage. Getting him into 80% of my lineups is probably something I might think about doing. Thoughts on Kamara?
Yeah, man. He's obviously one of the best plays in the slate. We know how much work he's going to get in the run game, but we also we know what volume he's going to see in the pass game. He's one of the top targets on the team, right? So, look, I love Alvin Kamara. I think you're going to kind of need to determine how much of it you're going to be able to play at captain. The slate is so tight from a salary perspective, and even then, man, there's not even a mid tier that I'm necessarily comfortable with to kind of play like a different price captain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're just in this range, and you're gonna have to try and find something that you like. But look, Kamara, 42% ownership. That's low too, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just going to be one of my favorite plays on the slate. Jamal Williams, 4,200. I think he's fine. Again, that range of 4K, there's still nobody that I love. So you're not going to be comfortable playing any of these guys. But we know Jamal Williams. We saw how many touchdowns he got last year. We know that he can get some work. At 15% ownership, I don't think that's crazy. And again, this is where hop in the Discord. We'll update you on inactives or whatever. But if Kendry Miller's healthy, I would expect him to be the third back. If he's 1K inactive, then I mean he's somebody I would consider. Outside of that, man, I don't know that I'm going any further than Jamal Williams.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, keep an eye on Kendry Miller there for sure. All right, Rams, Kyren Williams, 11.2K. Play him. One thing I will say about some of this ownership you're seeing, this is obvious. This is not up to date. Olave is not projected to play according to SaberSim right now, which I think that should change. But we're recording this on Wednesday around 1 p.m. That'll change. But some of these ownerships will adjust. But I think generally speaking, you're seeing Kyren Williams at 42%. That's probably not going to. That might even go down a little bit with Olave coming in. On this slate, like taking stands on these studs and then just fading, one of these mid-range guys might be the way to go. Because at 40% ownership for a guy who you would expect to get over 100 yards rushing, get a couple of catches, and score a touchdown on a showdown slate is a guy that you want to have in a lot of your builds. So for me, 11.2K, I'll find a way to eat it. And playing him at captain is scary because of how expensive he is. But, he's the kind of guy that you might absolutely need him at captain to even cash on certain slates. Royce Freeman's 2,600. I'm not super interested in him. I think it's just Kyren Williams or bust here. There's really not a whole lot to talk about here. Play Kyren Williams, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, dude. Kyren Williams, he's just been receiving an insane amount of the workload. It's kind of crazy, to be honest. And it really, we shouldn't be all that surprised, just considering how much Mike McVay, goddamn, how much Sean McVay hates Cam Akers, right? We should have known that Kyren Williams was going to have a season like this. But yeah. Look, man, 11,200. He's expensive. I don't really see any way around it. Yeah, I mean, he's going to get 2 touchdowns and 100 yards. It's pretty much guaranteed from him at this point.
It feels like it. It really does. Let's go to wide receivers. Start with the Rams. Cooper Kupp, 11K. So you're talking about getting, it's scary, but getting Kupp at 11K, Kyren Williams at 11.2K, and Stafford at 10K. Like, to me, I want a whole lot of that. Now, you could pivot from Kupp to Nakua, save a little bit of money, 9,600 for Puka. DeMarcus Robinson, 5,400. Skowronek 400, Trammell 200. We don't have Tutu Atwell in here. Let me sort by salary, and you will be able to see him a little bit better here. 2,800. If he plays, I'm interested in him at 2,800. You know, what are we like? If Tutu Atwell plays, I'm not super interested in getting to DeMarcus Robinson, but we just don't know where the splits are going to come in. Is Tutu going to just get plugged right back into his spot? I don't think so. I think we might see a little bit more DeMarcus Robinson, but he's 5,400, and these mid-range guys are just going to be hard to fit in. Might think about going down to Tutu at 2,800, which with a lot lower ownership, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, I think there's one thing that we can talk about here, which is kind of a little opposite of what we were saying at the quarterback side. The Rams are an interesting offense. We know that Nakua and Cooper Kupp are going to dominate target share, just volume in general. If we think that the Saints defense can maybe limit the actual scoring output, the touchdowns, you may be able to kind of get unique by really stacking lineups with Kupp and Nakua and considering fading Stafford, right? I think Stafford, he's getting 12 to 16 points or something like that, which is fine. But these are both guys that can end with 8 to 10 receptions, 150, 60 yards, and honestly not get in the end zone. I doubt it, right? I do expect one of these guys to end up with a couple touchdowns. But if that's a game script you're building for on a slate like this, where we just don't have that much value, that might be something unique enough to help you get some high upside plays. Anyways, that said, don't forget about Cooper Kupp. I know it's hard to pay up for him. There's a lot to pay for on this slate. And his numbers on the season don't look great, but that's because he's been hurt. You look at him on a per game basis. Him and Nakua are just they're 1A and 1B. They have damn near the same stats, like the same output when it comes to fantasy production. And we all know that who Cooper Kupp is. He can easily end up being the highest scoring guy in the slate. Nakua, very similar, 9,600. Both these guys being under 35% owned is kind of crazy to me. I'll be over 50%, probably both, and I'll have plenty of lineups with both these guys if I can.
Look. Go ahead. No, well, I was just going to say, like, to me, we can't forget who Cooper Kupp is. Like, last year and years previous, if Cooper Kupp was on the showdown slate, it was similar to CMC. You just lock him in. The biggest question is, do I play him at captain or not? And at this point in the season, we've seen him 2 straight games over 100 yards, 2 straight games with a touchdown. Is he back to Cooper Kupp of last year? Maybe not yet. But he's still a guy that you might absolutely need. He might, he's getting 8 targets a game last few weeks, like, and this is a guy that can easily have 10 receptions, 150 yards, and a touchdown. Both of these dudes can. We've seen it happen. We saw Puka Nacua absolutely break records this year with no Kupp. I think you got to get a minimum of 1. You're not going to be able to get a ton of 2. You might have to fade Stafford. You might have to fade Kyren Williams. I don't mind that in certain builds, like as long as the game script fits. Leaving Kyren Williams out of builds with Kupp, Nakua, and Stafford is okay. But I think you got to have at least 1, 1 for sure.
Yeah. And I might have gotten a little carried away. Obviously, it's going to be tough to have over 50% exposure to both those guys and still get Kamara. A little hyperbole. I obviously like both these guys. And then just real quick, wanted to comment on D-Rob versus Atwell. Obviously, if Atwell plays, I think that kind of removes much interest I have in DeMarcus Robinson. But if Atwell plays, I do like him at 2,800. If not, D-Rob 5,400 is fine. Again, that position's getting 4 or 5 targets a game, so I think they're definitely in play.
Atwell looked good as a number 2 wide receiver behind Nakua with Kupp out. He hasn't really looked great since we've seen them at full strength. But Tutu is one of these guys that always just messes the slate up for everybody. So don't forget about him, because I feel like Tutu can absolutely score a touchdown in this game if he's back and he's getting at least 50% of the snaps. All right, wide receivers on the other side. So Chris Olave is 8,600, dude. I know he's banged up, but a guy that's 8,600 that has high upside and is number 1 wide receiver going against the Rams defense, they're going to give up yards. They're going to give up passing touchdowns, potentially. But a guy like Chris Olave at 8,600 is a good captain option, man. If he's back, his ownership will probably be depressed. There is some re-injury risk, obviously. This is 2023, man. Name the slate, and I'll give you a 30% owned guy that leaves the game in the first quarter. It freaking happens every single slate. But to me, Olave at 8,600, man, you got to think of getting him as a captain. Let's talk about Olave first here. how comfortable are you going heavy on him knowing that he's got a bum ankle?
I mean, right now, like here's the thing: if he's clear to play, he's clear to play. I'm just going to assume that he's ready to go. So, well, to some extent, look, I think he's fine. At his price, I think he gives you your most upside at the captain spot. I don't think you necessarily need to play him in the flex. 8,600 still expensive. I think I'd rather get to some other guys, but at 8,600 at captain, again, I don't want to be too ridiculous here, but going back to those unrealized air yards, those turn into receptions, all of a sudden he's putting up some pretty spectacular numbers. We saw what he did last year. That's why his draft capital, God damn, what did I say? His draft capital in best ball or whatever was so high, was because we know what he was going to be able to do.
Yeah.
That said, I just, I think that he's an excellent captain play. He puts up those ceiling type performances. That's where you're going to need him. If he just has one of his normal middling games where he kind of that he's had all year, then I think you're fine fading him in general, and as opposed to even having him in the flex.
Yeah. So potentially a way of doing this, put him in captain above the field, maybe 10% of your lineups at captain, and then be under the field or fade in the flex. That's an option. I don't know that that's the road I'm taking, but he's still 8,600. So if you play him at captain, you get the biggest benefit. Putting him in the flex is going to be tough. Like we said, Kamara or Olave is probably minimum of 1 in your lineups, but getting to him and Kamara is going to be tough. And I like Kamara a little bit better. Shahid 7K, he's basically priced as if Olave is going to be out. So I don't really like Shahid in this matchup at 7K. I don't know how you can afford to get him unless Olave's out. And if Olave is out, all these guys are now in play, and all these guys are good plays. Lynn Bowden Jr. back from the dead. I didn't even know this guy was in the league still. I still have I think I have a rookie card from him when he was in the Dolphins and didn't even play that year for the Dolphins. But he gets involved. A.T. Perry, Keith Kirkwood, Marquez Callaway, like these guys are all kind of the same guy almost. Shahid to me is a fadeable option with Olave in. What are we doing with all these random scrub wide receivers? Like the only way I'm going to go out of my way to play these guys is if Olave is out, right?
Yeah, if Olave's out, then obviously it opens up a lot of opportunity for some of these other guys. But yeah, you're right; they're priced like Olave's in. So for the most part, I'm just not going to have that much exposure to them. That said, this again, we've been saying it the whole show, but pretty much under 4K, that whole range just sucks. Like, I don't know, man. Like Lynn Bowden, A.T. Perry, Keith Kirkwood, like they all need to be under like $1,800.
I'd rather play Jimmy Graham, because we'll get to him in a minute, but like I just don't trying to figure out which one of these guys is going to score. Keith Kirkwood had a touchdown last week. A.T. Perry gets involved. Lynn Bowden gets these random gadget plays. Shahid is a big play type dude who could break the slate. Look, I'm not going to have 0 Shahid. Probably get a couple with him at captain. But determining which one of these guys is going to score is a nightmare. And I'm going to have 100 plus lineups, so I'll get my share of these guys, between 5 to 10%. But I'm not going heavy on anybody unless you have some sort of inside information as to which one of these guys is going to have more opportunities. I don't think you can confidently play anybody. Let's go to tight end. Taysom Hill, 6,600. This is a showdown slate. Basically, whatever you decide to do, he's going to do the opposite. So if you play a lot of him, he'll suck. And if you fade him, he'll have 2 touchdowns. It's just how this world is. Juwan Johnson, 4K, had a touchdown last week. He's looked pretty good this year when he's healthy. But he's one of these guys that has injuries, almost every other week, it feels like. Foster Moreau got a ton of the snaps last week. Doesn't really get involved too much in the pass game at 2K. You got Jimmy Graham at 1,600. He's got 4 touchdowns this year. 3 straight games with a touchdown. His ownership will probably be, I know it's coming in at like 1%. I feel like his ownership will be a little higher than that. But 1,600, he's probably one of the only guys that I'm willing to play. But he's all touchdown dependent. You need a touchdown at him. You're probably going to get 7, 8, maybe 9 max fantasy points. But at 1,600, he allows you to get a lot more studs into your lineups, especially getting Kyron Williams as the captain. So what are we doing with tight ends here, man?
Yeah, man. I don't know. So like Taysom Hill being listed at tight end is just kind of annoying. Like I guess it doesn't matter because it's fucking showdown. But 6,600, right? Like excuse me, he's always a candidate to consider fading. But as soon as I put his picture up on that, that fade slide, that guarantees him a 2-touchdown game on 8 total yards. So, look, man, I'm not necessarily going to be all that interested in him, but it is showdown. So, and I am going to be running 100+ lineups. So I'll have 5-10% exposure to him. That said, again, this 4K and below price range just sucks. Right now, Juwan Johnson's probably one of the better plays at that price. I'm not going to like it, but I think right now you just have to consider a 4K Juwan Johnson. These other two guys, again, like, if you want to take stabs on in the goal line, we've seen Foster Moreau have a touchdown or two. Jimmy Graham, what does he have? 4 on 6 fucking targets? Like, some bullshit. He needs to score a touchdown at that price. But it's showdown. This is the night that he does it, right?
I don't know what his anytime touchdown prop is. But if I am under the field or I don't get to a lot of Jimmy Graham, maybe I put a couple bucks on that. But you're right, it's touchdown or bust for him. But at 1,600, I think he's one of these safer type value plays who might actually see a target in the red zone. You can't say that about a lot of these other value guys. All right, other side, Rams. Tyler Higbee's at 5,800. I think he's in a good spot. We talked about, both of these teams, their weakness on defense on paper is against the tight ends. Higbee at that price, he's kind of middle of the range. Maybe you put him in your, 5th spot and you punt with a guy in the last spot. But Davis Allen, with Higbee active, I'm not super interested in Davis Allen at 2,200. We did see him obviously look good in that game without Higbee. He scored his first career touchdown. But Tyler Higbee, I think, is one of these guys that's kind of a necessary evil because he's another one of these guys that when I ignore him, he has a 2-touchdown game. And we've seen it many a times. He's very up and down. You look at his box scores, it's boom or bust almost for him. So a Higbee captain lineup would not be, out of 100 lineups, maybe 2 or 3 captain lineups for Tyler Higbee is interesting. But a flex option for Higbee, I think you got to get above the field slightly. He's coming in around 15% ownership potentially. We'll see what happens when they do an update. But maybe 25%, maybe a little bit above the field. Where are you going with Higbee here? Any interest in these other scrub dudes? Look, this team runs 90% 11 personnel. They got one tight end on the field at a time. Higbee is going to be that guy if he's active.
Yeah, man, I like Higbee. We see that he's one of these guys is getting 4 or 5 targets a game. 5,800. We've got to find some salary that we're comfortable with, some salary saving guys that we're comfortable with. And I think your point right on is about having him a captain is right on. I think the thing that you need to consider if you're doing that, maybe leave a couple $100 on the table because the one thing on a slate like this is playing a mid-range captain is you're going to get a handful of the same builds. You're playing Tyler Higbee a captain so that you can jam in everybody else, right? Yeah. So just have a better game script than some of those people, unless you're only entering one lineup into the big contest, right? If you think it's going to chop 1,000 ways and you got one entry, there you go. You made some ROI.
Yeah.
But anyways, I digress. Tyler Higbee's fine. 5,800. He's probably one of the better guys at this price range that I'm comfortable with playing at this point.
All right, Ellie, let's talk about kickers and defense. Cover me for a second, if you don't mind. Talk about, you got, looks like Havrish is not getting a projection. I don't know why. Whoever this Rams kicker may be, we'll figure that out obviously in the Discord, but I think it's him. But just talk to the folks about some pricing here and thoughts on these defenses. I'll be back in like a minute.
Yeah. So Blake Groupie, 4,600 again. I'm just not comfortable with some of the salary saving options that we have available to us at this point. 4,600 is a decent price for a kicker, and I think I'm going to have to start looking at that for a little bit. He might be in some of my cash builds at this point. And then the Rams Saints defense, they're again like that under 4K price range just sucks. If these are either guys that can end up with a few sacks and maybe a takeaway or two, then it is possible that 3,800 Rams become a pretty solid defense. Defensive play for the slate. I don't know, man. Like, I think one that might be interesting is Aaron Donald against this bad offensive line. Yeah, I know that the Rams haven't necessarily put up a bunch of sacks this point into the season, but the bad offensive line against one of the best defenders that we've ever seen. I don't know. This could easily be a 2.5, 3 sack game for Aaron Donald, and just how bad the Saints offensive line is. If the amount of attention that Aaron Donald commands, it is possible they end up with a couple sacks and a turnover. So again, there's just no value that I'm comfortable with under 4K. I think that the Rams might actually be something I'd be consider playing, 15-20%. Until something else opens. And then again, the Saints not too interested in Luke Havlicek, whatever the hell his name is. Just same price kickers, right? I'm not in love with anything under 5K, 4K. So I'll be rotating in some of these kickers just because I'm comfortable with them at their price right now.
Yeah, I feel like the Rams defense, especially for my game script that I'm going to play out tonight, most of my lineups are going to have 4 Rams, maybe even 5. You're gonna end up with some defenses, the Rams defense in some of those. 20% is fine. Like, I don't think that this is a good defense per se. Raheem Morris has been, he's doing a pretty good job. I mean, this isn't a team that you see on the schedule and go, oh man, Rams defense, we're gonna be able to target, wide receivers or whomever against them. Anyways, it's kickers and defense, dude. This is not sexy to talk about. This is a 45.5 point total. I feel like some points will be put up, so I'm not prioritizing them, but I'll probably end up with some Rams. All right, let's get to our captain option here, our crown their ass segment. Give me 1 second. Where are you? Crown their ass.
Now, if you want to crown them, then crown their ass.
Ellie, you're going to Olave. I'm going Kyren Williams. Talk to me about your Olave play here. If people are skipping around, this isn't like a lock type play like Kyren would be. What's your strategy here? You mentioned maybe getting to decent amount at captain because of his price and his upside, and then maybe being a little under the field in the flex. Thoughts?
Yeah, so the first thing is if you're skipping around, watch this whole segment and then watch the whole next segment at the very least, please. Otherwise, you're going to be confused as hell. But look, man, Chris Olave at captain, I think he's just an excellent play given his salary. I think he's going to give us a little bit of flexibility that you're going to need if you want to play any studs. So we know what he's capable of. He's got the shitload of unrealized air yards. Some of those catches turn into actual fantasy points. That's huge. But yeah, I think you do come under the field in the flex if you play him at all. He hasn't been getting there. The reason we're playing him is purely for his potential upside that he's been missing out this whole time. So that's really kind of the thesis here. All that said, this is GPP. This isn't cash. This isn't single entry. I think the guy that you chose is probably the way to go for that.
Yeah, and for both for GPP and single entry, I think Kyren is a good option. You're just going to have to figure out a way to get different enough when it comes to GPPs and be able to afford a lineup that you actually enjoy, that's difficult. Let's get to our fade here.
We couldn't do diddly poo.
Ellie, what? You're fading Olave? How is that possible?
Yeah, man. So again, just keeping it real simple here. We just don't like him in the flex, or at least I don't necessarily. I don't want to galaxy brain this. Like, if you get a bunch of Olave in the flex, like, you're not doing anything stupid. But I just think that there's other guys that I'm going to get to. Like, I think you're not necessarily going to get to Derek Carr. You're not necessarily going to get to Olave, and that's going to give you the flexibility you need to get Kyren, a wide receiver, and Stafford.
Yeah, and I'm going under on Rashid Shaheed in general with Olave back. If Olave is out, that kind of changes a lot. And make sure you're in the Discord for any of that. I just don't feel at a 7K price tag that it's worth it. And a guy like Shaheed is probably more of a boom-bust type dude. So I'll get a couple with him at captain. 2 or 3 lineups with him at captain. Potentially, but fading him in the flex. That's my thought on it. All right, let's go to lineup builds. Let's jump over to Draftkings here. Let's pull this up. Make sure you guys throw us a like if you guys are enjoying this. Subscribe. We appreciate you. Join that free Discord. We also have our YouTube members that you can join down below. $3.99 a month. You'll get 1 showdown show a week. The reason why I'm not saying specifically Monday night is because we're kind of coming towards the end of the season. There's a couple weeks here coming up that don't have Monday night. We're going to figure out something, whether it's Thursday night just for the members or Sunday night or a special show altogether. We'll figure that out. But join that down below. Help support the channel. We really appreciate it. let's get into our single entry sort of cash build. I've been running cold as hell on these lately, man. I don't know what it is. I'd love to break out of that and cash in one of these $50 single entries. But we're building for one of these that are under 1,000 entries. If you're doing like a $5 single entry, the strategy is probably more similar to a GPP build. But this one I want to be a little bit safer with. So Kyren at captain, let's try that. And you're just going to immediately see how difficult this is, because let's get Stafford, let's get Cup, let's get Kamara. You're screwed. I mean, you can't do this. You could punt with two $200 guys that might not even see the field. And on a slate like this, there's not a lot of value. So for a Kyren Williams captain, do we fade Stafford in this particular build and leave Cup in?
Yeah, let's try that.
I mean, you could always obviously go with, instead of Cup, go down to Nakua, save you a little value there. It doesn't matter to me. I'd prefer Cup because I feel like he's still Cooper Cup, and it's a showdown slate. So let's talk about this. We got Kamara, so probably not going to want to go Olave into flex for this one. Where do we go now? We got 3 spots open with about 3,800 apiece. Is this kicker city? Is this do we want to get it? Do we want to get another? Do we want to get Nakua in this one too? I know we don't have Stafford, but this is a single entry, and like you were saying earlier, they could still get you there with PPR points. What are we doing here for these other spots? Because this is tough.
I think we need to just start with the value and kind of just see where we're at. Like, how comfortable are we going down here?
We're not. I mean, if Tutu Atwell comes back, I might consider that. But this feels like again another slate where you got to punt in your single entry. But I just don't want to. Like, let's just go mid range across the board here and see what that does for us. Let's get a groupie in here, right? 3,400.
Yeah.
There's no. I mean, if Olave news comes out, then that changes everything. But he's supposed to play, so I'm not gonna build as if he's out. Like Jimmy Graham, I'm not playing in my single entry. Like, if he gets you 0 at 1,600 and you could afford to play all these dudes together, that might be worth it. But I'm not doing it because he's not on the field enough. It feels like we can't do this. Like, should we go down from Cup to Nakua? Or do you have any other options here? Juwan Johnson?
I mean, okay, go all the way to the bottom. Let's just see if I know we already did all this, but are there any $200 guys we would consider? Because I don't know.
No. I mean, Skoranek is Skoranek, probably not. He's more of a special teams guy at this point. Kendry Miller at a 1K if he comes back, but you're still talking about the third running back, even and if he does play. Foster Moreau, these guys all suck.
Yeah, maybe you have to pull out Cup. I mean, I think maybe if you're going to do that, you're probably just better off going Stafford. I don't know if I necessarily want to go to Nakua.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what I mean?
I agree.
Then I can get all the offense.
I get all the passing touchdowns through Stafford.
Well, it didn't really do anything.
It doesn't do much. I mean, let's build without Kyren Williams at captain. So if we're not building with Kyren at captain, where do we want to go? Do you want to go Kamara here? Do you want to go Stafford captain?
Let's try Kamara, because Kamara is going to be the last of that tier. If he doesn't work, then sure, Stafford's fine.
Yeah. So Kyren, let's go Stafford. Let's just grab Cup and see what happens. You see why we're not interested in playing Derek Carr in this? Like, yes, he could come out and throw for 3 touchdowns. It's just, but he can't. You're telling me I have to make the decision between Carr or Stafford. Okay, I'm picking Stafford. Carr or Cup, Carr or Nakua. I'm picking the Rams guys. But you're screwed here. We're screwed. So we can't get Kyren, Stafford, and Cup. Let's go down to Nakua and see if that does anything for us. 1,500. You got a double punt. This is not a slate to double punt. This is barely a slate to punt at all, unfortunately. So what do? We got to pull Stafford out of here?
No, leave Stafford in.
Okay. So
and then let.
You want to get a New Orleans guy? Remember, this is single entry. We're trying to build a high floor type build. Taysom Hill, Juwan Johnson.
I mean, I let's go down to kickers. Yeah, Juwan Johnson. He's 4K. That's actually really a good call out.
All right, let's try it.
Juwan Johnson, and then
kickers.
Damn, yeah.
One kicker, and then we'll have to defense. All right, we know how this is going to work out. Let's just put Olave in a captain here and see what this does for us at that price. If Olave's healthy, let's see what we can do. This might be a good strategy. Play Olave at captain in your single entry, fade him in the flex in your GPP builds, and play some extra captain with him for GPP. All right, so Kyron. Should we try to get Kamara with Olave, or is this an either-or situation?
Well, this is going to be a bitch, but let's just try Kamara and let's try Stafford.
All right, we're in an okay spot here. Can we get what happens if we get to Groupie or I guess you can go Havershik or whatever the hell this guy's name is. Let's just put Groupie because he's a little cheaper. You're down to Skoranek. You're down to third string tight ends. No, we just can't do it.
Yeah.
So instead of Stafford, let's go with Jiminy Christmas, man. Let's go with Nakua. So in this case, we can't. Let's see if we can get the kicker. It's still $900. So you want to pull out Kamara in this one?
Yeah.
All right. So go down to Stafford maybe, or this is terrible, dude. Olave, Williams, Kyron Williams, Stafford, Puka. We're in a maybe a little bit better spot, but still not good. This is why this middle range guys are going to be hard to get.
All right, hear me out. We're just so this is probably crazy, but what if we actually? I don't mind Gerald Everett, but I like this might be dumb as fuck. Like Gerald I think Everett. We can consider one of the kickers a captain for single entry.
Really? All right.
Yeah. So what happens if we put in Tim Havershek or Hornacek, whatever the fuck his name is?
Well, I know what happens is we're gonna get 10 people that are gonna unsubscribe right now. That's probably what'll happen. But let's just try it. All right, let's just jam in all the best guys here. Kupp, Kamara, Stafford. Nope, can't do that.
Dude, if you can't even do it with the kicker, man, Jesus.
You can't even do it with the kicker, man. It's gonna be.
You want to try Gerald Everett and see what we can make comfortably here?
Why do you keep saying Gerald Everett?
Oh, yeah, because he used to play for the fucking
Juwan Johnson.
It's no, dude. What is Tyler Higbee? He used to play. Okay. Gerald Everett used to play for the Rams, right? Like, goddamn, my bad, y'all. All
right, we're clearly moving on to GPPs here because we got some work to do on the single entry. For our YouTube members, we'll have that core single entry inside the private channel, YouTube channel in the Discord. That Discord's free, obviously, but we have a private channel just for our YouTube members. That'll be posted after inactives. But let's move on to GPPs because this is not fun. All right, Higbee captain. Let's go Kyron. You want to go Stafford here and then see if we can get Nakua or Kupp. I think we probably can't. You want to pull Stafford and put in Kupp? And then go
we can do that.
Go with AK or Olave?
Let's go Kamara, yeah.
All right, so for GPPs, Jiminy Christmas, this is insane. Let's get Tutu Atwell in this one, right? I think you can actually consider Tutu Atwell for single entry too if he's active. Let's get him in, and that leaves us with 5,500. So Demarcus Robinson, we're not going to do both of those guys. So this is a kicker situation here. Let's get Groupie. So this is like the first actual lineup that I don't 100% hate. Higbee. Look, here's the problem here. Is we don't have Stafford and we got 3 pass catchers, which is a bit scary. We've seen weirder things happen A guy like Higbee, all it takes is one, maybe Higbee gets you there with no touchdowns and just 6 receptions or something. I don't know, man. This whole slate is kind of messed up with Olave coming back. If Olave is out, this slate is a playable, pretty good slate as far as comfortably building. Let's where do you want to go here? We know all this sucks and we know we're gonna have to make decisions. Do you want to play a stud at captain for GPP and get wild? You want to do like a Kamara 1-5 or something?
Yeah, I actually kind of do. Let's do Kamara, and then let's fade Kyron in this one. Let's do Cup, Stafford,
and Nakua.
Do it, and then can we get to the Rams? No, the Rams defense.
So maybe we can't do Nakua here. All right, let's pull Nakua out. That sucks. Let's get middle of the road then. Let's do Higbee here.
Yep, I like it.
Let's do Tutu Atwell if he's active.
Yeah.
4,200. Kamara and Jamal Williams. More than likely, it'd probably be a Juwan Johnson situation here. Look, at the end of the day, like I think this is a good football game. For those listening on the podcast, Kamara, Stafford, Cup, Higbee, Atwell, Juwan Johnson. I know we were trying to go for a 1-5 there, but look, this is a good game.
And you can throw in the Rams defense instead of Juwan Johnson. You got a 1-5.
Can you? Oh, yeah, you can. Okay, there we go. That feels a little bit more ideal. But dude, like I was saying, like it feels like a pretty interesting game to watch. But when it comes to building lineups, that sucks. And ideally, maybe Olave misses this game. That makes things a lot easier for everybody. But it looks like he's going to play. So everybody's priced as if Olave is in. What are we doing here, man? What'd you learn? What'd you learn?
So like we talk about it sometimes, but these are the slates I think that end up being the more fun. It's just when nobody knows, right? We're all at the same information disadvantage here, and we're all kind of fucked by the same limitations of pricing. So I think in our particular case, we're going to be less crazy just playing random dudes, right? We've said it before. Sometimes you can kind of just play anybody when it comes to GPP. If you're feeling something is going to happen, like tonight's night, do it. We have no idea, and we just can't afford to play everybody. So if you have a gut feeling, this is a slate to start, trusting your gut a little bit, I think. Yeah,
and I think the one mistake to be made tonight is not going heavy on a certain player and getting in the 30 or 40% range for everybody. Like, pick your guys. Like, to me, Kyron Williams, I'm going to be way above the field on. The combination of either Puka or Cup, I'm going to try to be way. The problem here is we're probably going to end up under the field on either Puka or Cup. So to me, I'm picking Cup because he's more expensive, and there's still a question mark out there as to whether or not he's fully back to being Cup. I think he kind of is on that path, and to me, I'd rather go heavier on Cooper Kupp than just be middle, with the field on both of those guys. I don't know. That's just my thought. Does that make any sense? Yeah, absolutely. We talked about it the Eagles show, right? Like I'd rather go heavy on the high end dude who can score a shitload of fantasy points that people aren't sure of. Yep. Right? If I lose all my money because I'm betting on Cooper Kupp, that's fine. Like I can live with that. Yeah, absolutely. All right, we appreciate you guys. We're gonna be doing a Saturday 2-gamer. We've got another one of those coming up. Expect that. What are we recording that tomorrow, Ellie? So expect that either Thursday afternoon or Friday morning. And then we obviously have our Sunday night showdown this week and Monday night this week for the YouTube members. We will see you guys later. Appreciate it. Throw us a like on the way out.